So, first things first, let's make sure that we're in JDoodle, we're in a Python 3 program, and we have interactive mode turned on because we're going to wind up having to have player inputs, right? They're going to have to physically type something in. Now, you already know how to do inputs, but first let's figure out what a random number is first, because we all know we can simply print our numbers or whatnot. These are integers, 10, 25. This will wind up being 35, so of course if I hit execute, oops, there we go, once it actually loads, it'll tell me, sum of x and y is 35. We know how to do those sort of print statements. So, let's figure out how to import some things. So, first things first, if I want to import a random, let's just simply import random. That alone is going to actually, simply say I'm importing a random number. So, now of course, I need to define said random number in some sort of integer, right? So if I were to make, I don't know, let me just name this my new number, and make it equal to something, and I'll make it a random.randint, randint, and now I have a couple things. So I'm going with a random number, but what am I going? Am I going with a random number or a random integer, random string? I'm going with a random integer. So it's going to be a random integer from, and here's where we get to put constraints on it. So I can say I'll have it from 1, that'll be my starting point, to 100, that'll be my ending point. So now it could be any number including 1 through 100. And then of course I can simply print, my new number. And in theory, this should work. And it gave me 47. That was a random number between 1 and 100. So I simply said to the computer, hey, I'm importing something that's random. And what am I going to... And then I had to make my variable, My variable, which I could have named this banana, I could have named it porcupine. Same rules as always apply. As long as I name it the same thing here as I name it here, it'll understand that these are the same thing. And what was that? It was going to be a random integer, and that integer has a starting point of 1 and an ending point of 100. So if I hit execute again, this time it gave me 88. It gave me a different random number. Now, the thing about random numbers is they're really not random. They actually involve many, many complex things to simulate randomness. But that's really not the point, and, for the sake of this class, it's random enough. But, eventually, if you were to keep doing this over and over again, you would recognize a pattern of some sort emerging. Same thing is true with, honestly, every single video game ever made. There's no such thing as randomness. Even if you had an entire wall of lava lamps and you translate that to a picture, which translates to code, which, yes, there is security teams that do that. Yes, you could secure your entire hard drive or your bank account with a lava lamp. But even if you did that, there is not really an actual randomness in the computer aspect itself. It's all tied to timers and clocks and ticks and positioning screens and all these sort of things to simulate randomness. But, yeah, and of course if I were to change this and I say, okay, now it's a random number between 1 and 10, hit execute, it'll give me, 8, or it'll give me, 3. It'll give me something between 1 and 10. I cannot physically, go beyond my stopping point. So if I were to make this, whoops, when I actually click in the code area, if I were to make this, I don't know, that big number. I don't even know how many zeros that is there. And now my random number is something in between all that. So yes, that is how a random number works, and we're going to be using that. But the other thing we're going to need to learn is we're also going to need to learn how to call a function.